Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am live this evening with Paul Sutliff, although it's always my first instinct to call him Dr. Paul Sutliff, because whenever I speak with him, I go, that's definitely Dr. Paul Sutliff. He certainly deserves it. Very educated man, very experienced, and he's active in the field as a Christian apologist. He's out there trying to make a difference. He has written some fantastic work on the Muslim Brotherhood and on Islam. And it's always an honor and a privilege to have him on the channel. So thank you for joining me, Paul.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, tell us, you were at some conference today. You were at some event that may be relevant
Oh,
to the audience.
it's a prayer group. It's just a prayer ministry that I help lead.
Okay, yeah. So today's topic, we wanted to discuss, now that Emperor Trump has been elected, and I believe that is his proper title, the Emperor Trump has been elected. In fact, he's been elected by a jury of his peers to the highest office in the universe. We want to congratulate him on that well-earned victory, that very hard-earned victory, but also we'd like to talk about Christian apologetics and where it converges with politics. Because while we may not have a great interest in politics sometimes, politics has an interest in us. And I think also our enemies like to define our virtue for us, and they want us as Christians to, I don't know, step out of these secular world because, that's really not a Christian thing to play over there in that little small corner. And actually, I just did a talk last night, Paul. I discussed the founding of America. I'll be doing a series on it. I'll be doing several episodes talking about how America was founded as a Christian nation, how the majority of the founding fathers were devout Christians. And even though some of them fell along the wayside out of Orthodox Christianity and, shall we say, straight into heresy, they still came out of a background, a childhood and adulthood that was steeped, and a culture that was steeped in Christianity, and they retained their Christian roots despite where they may have strayed into Unitarianism and disbelief in the Trinity or Jesus' divinity. However, the laws that they promulgated, the documents they wrote, were all heavily based on Christianity. And you have secularists and atheists trying to imply that no, they were secularists, they were Enlightenment thinkers, they were atheists, they were deists, and this is all false. And I think America was founded on a Christian background, and I think Christians need to be involved in politics because Christianity was involved in politics at the founding of America. So yeah, over to you.
Well, I will say this. There has been a very big attempt to shut up the Christians. In the United States, they created something called the 501c3, which would make a taxable organization not able to talk politics. You can't endorse candidates. That doesn't mean you can't express your point of view, and many places are scared. Well, the truth is you can semi-endorse a candidate. Here's how. You can take a stand with them or against something that another candidate, like you can stand against abortion. Oh, well, if you dare to do that, and you got a Democratic mayor like we do in my city, at one point, she was demanding, I need to see your sermons before you give them. My pastor said, over my dead body. It's not going to happen. No,
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a stifling of your First Amendment right and your religious freedom. That's a violation of the Constitution right there.
But that's what the Democrats don't want, the Constitution. That was why they were running for office this time. They want to take away your rights. And this is something that anyone who is, even the Democrats I know, voted Trump. I only know of, I don't think you can be a Democrat and not know how evil the Biden-Harris administration was and how its goal was the destruction of America. Nicodemus, it's called 501c3. It's a tax status for nonprofits, and you're not allowed to discuss, or you're not allowed to promote any individual candidate, which makes it even more humorous, where people like Harris and other politicians will go to churches and speak with no opposition present, which is, again, a violation of their 501c3 status. And yeah, that was one of the lawyers that went against Trump, and she was claiming she was not racist by going to a church. Yeah.
Wow.
You see all these things. It's just kind of mind-numbing. They play the games, but you're not allowed to. And people like me will fight that.
don't you think the culture is currently shifting? We see now, for instance, there have been hundreds, thousands of TikTok videos of youth. We're talking 18, 19-year-olds, freshmen at college, doing the Trump dance, with the, and they're open about it now. They've become much more public about this because the culture has shifted. The Because there are consequences now for the Democrats for trying to shut people up. We've seen the release of the Twitter files, and we've just seen now that actually, let me find that. We've just seen now there's let me bring this up for a moment. Let me share my screen because, yeah, this is, and then you can tell us some of the stuff we were discussing off screen that was very interesting. So, according to Attorney General Andrew Bailey, let me bring this onto the screen. The court has cleared the way for us to obtain even more documents to expose and dismantle the Biden-Harris censorship regime once and for all. So this lawsuit is for every American who has been censored by our own government. So now we're starting to see successful efforts to censor, well, to sue the government for what they've been doing, and hopefully people will be taken to task. I know you haven't seen it, but maybe some of the audience has. President Trump released a statement. Sorry, Emperor Trump released a statement yesterday, which was amazing, where he spoke about how he is going to dismantle the censorship industrial complex. And it was an incredible 4 or 5 minute statement on how he's going to, dismantle the power of the media and make sure that they follow the law and dismantle these efforts to censor and get the government out of the censorship business. It was incredible. And you had some interesting stories that you told me right after I said that. If you want to maybe just add some of those.
I received a lifetime ban from LinkedIn for simply telling the truth about COVID being a Chinese bioweapon, and that the jab that some people may have decided to call a vaccine, which it's not, it's genetic engineering. In fact, Pfizer had, I was using their pages to advertise this, to show these things, and they sent me a lifetime ban. Well, a year later, I was complaining, and they sent me a statement saying I had violated 3 things. I had repeatedly done these things, and I said, well, tell me what they were. You never told me anything. And LinkedIn, they can ban you for any reason. They don't tell you why. They just ban you. Well,
just to pause a moment, because President Trump stated, sorry, I apologize, Emperor Trump stated yesterday that he was going to make it a law and regulation that all social media, if they decide to take action against you, they must give you a clear, specific reason why. They can't come with these, you violated our terms of service. I had my Instagram account deleted for no reason. Now, I was on Facebook and I posted, and I think people mass reported me to Facebook, but all I ever posted on Instagram was photographs of my travels. And it was just deleted one day with no recourse to appeal. And all I posted was pictures of lakes, rivers, and mountains. And it was taken away. I mean, literally, that's all I ever posted there. Nothing else. No commentary, nothing, just photos. So, yeah, that's shocking that it happened to you as well.
So in LinkedIn, there was a pattern. That was what I got to see was an advantage. For me, the pattern was seeing people who endorsed law enforcement were getting banned. In fact, the persons who ran law enforcement today got lifetime bans just before I got mine. And I was watching that happen, and I wasn't going to shut up. I'm not the kind of guy who can. I'm sorry, I just can't. I'm going to expose what's evil, and that's just how God's made me. So I'm out there doing that, and they sent me a year later, they sent me statements saying I had done these things. Yeah. By the way, this scientific article says I was right. By the way, so your censorship of that means you violated your terms of service. All right. All these things I said were actually backed by scientific evidence.
You posted CDC data and you were banned for that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's part of why I was banned. It's just a small, it's like 3 things they were saying, but everything they said that I said was wrong was backed by scientific data, which I found later scientific journal articles, and I found that humorous. So they put me back in if I promise not to do anything again. And I says, well, I never did anything, so I'm not promising not to do it. Well, you promise not to do it. I got back in.
So are you back on LinkedIn now? Have they enabled your account
Yeah.
again?
Yep. Oh yeah. I've been on for since it's shortly after Elon Musk took over. I was out for at least a year and a half, I would say. So during that time period, 2020, 2021, somewhere's in there, I was out for about a year and a half.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is going to become a very niche product. And I mean, Elon Musk may
I love
eventually
it.
replace it. Yeah.
I've got people telling me they want to go other places, but I've got 18,000 connections in there. And to be honest, I've made the most valuable connections for doing Christian apologetics there, and for
Okay, no, it
doing
has its
talking about
place.
the Muslim Brotherhood there.
Yeah. Okay, no, it has its place certainly. It's very niche, but yeah. Okay, well that's good. I mean, so at least you've gotten value out of it, so that's beneficial. The theme that we were discussing was we want to talk about the what are the consequences on the Muslim Brotherhood and Muslim infiltration into the culture now that Emperor Trump has been elected by a jury of his peers. They studied the evidence, they looked at his case, and they said this man needs to be emperor, and they elected him, which is I think just the right thing to do, because I think all of us breathed a sigh of relief on the morning of the election. Oh my gosh, that was just fantastic. I mean,
I think it's going to be really amusing.
Sorry?
I think it'll be amusing because I think he's going to influence Europe for the good.
I agree. I mean, I just wrote a thread on something. You've got these Hamas inspired marches which are in support of terror groups, which are in support of literal genocide, of the erasure of the Israeli state. You've had, just in the city of Anne Frank, you've had hordes of Muslims driving over Jews, throwing them into the river. Apparently people have been stabbed. People are missing. So you've got Muslim mobs marauding through Amsterdam looking and hunting for Jews. And the apologetics that have come out, well, actually, the Israelis the previous day were ripping down Palestinian flags. Well, I know Hamas supporters who've been ripping down American flags. Are we then entitled to drive over them? Are we entitled to throw them into the river? Are we entitled then? I mean, this is a hypothetical, to stab them because that's provocation, according to the insane comments, the apologetics for this kind of violent madness that I've been seeing. And what do you think the consequences? Well, what are the consequences going to be now? Because the culture has shifted, and I think the shoe is now on the other foot.
I think we're going to see. I think Trump is probably going to bring in Mike Rogers, Kash Patel, and I would say Roger Stone, but I think he's a little bit too old. And because he's going to bring in,
Roger Stone, also maybe a little bit too drunk on occasion.
Yeah, I think he's bringing in a number of people who know who the Muslim Brotherhood are, and that was the original reason they wanted Mike Rogers out. He knows a lot of stuff, and they are scared. The question is, who will he bring in to be to hold certain offices? Well, I can say this: I am aware that there was an original plan before he picked certain people for certain offices to weed out the Muslim Brotherhood from the government as a whole, the federal government as a whole. Because of that, being aware of that, I would like to have seen that action happen. He picked the right guy for that job. It would have happened. They would have been weeded out. However, there were certain people who stood in the way of that happening. And I know President Trump, I gave him a copy of my book on the Muslim Brotherhood. I handed it to him personally.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah. My understanding is that he read it, and that he actually, at one point, after taking office, he quoted either from an article I did or something, maybe just has great advisors. I was hoping that's what I'd like to believe. It's just his good advisors. And this is shortly after he took office, that he was quoting something, and I was just we'll see how this pulls out. I'm going to pull this over so hopefully it won't bother. And I'll come back. All right. So I had written this piece and I had quoted Dr. Carafano on the. I had quoted Dr. Carafano on one of the things he had done on Gadi Edelman's America Akbar. It was a question that I proposed, and he had said this: somebody took a good idea and made it into something really stupid. Like they said, let's remake Ghostbusters or The Magnificent Seven. This actually started in the Bush administration. You talk about the CVE. So CVE, if you think about that, which was extremely dangerous as a whole and in promoting the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, I mean, it's like telling doctors, look, we're going to eliminate certain language from your medical textbooks. From now on, you can only speak about violent body extremism. You may not use the words attack. You can't use the word heart. You cannot use EKG. You cannot use the term pulmonary. So you have to say, I'm experiencing violent body extremism. I mean, that really makes it specific, doesn't it? I am experiencing, um, an extreme of chest cavity palpitations. That's kind of stupid because how do you broach the subject? How can you name the issue and deal with it if you cannot use the right words to describe it? I mean, that's infiltration. And a question here is, looking at the impact of Emperor Trump's presidency on the discourse surrounding Islamic extremism and the Muslim Brotherhood, do you think the narrative has shifted, and how do you think the narrative will shift? Because you said it's going to have a positive impact in Europe, and I do believe so. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think because he's picked, I think he will bring Mike Rogers and Kash Patel. They both know who the Muslim Brotherhood members are. They both have the potential to begin the weeding. And the good thing that actually happened from him losing and being cheated out of office, and I say it's a good thing, he really got an opportunity.
He wasn't cheated. Biden really did get 81 million votes. In fact, he probably got 120 million.
The Democrats are upset now. They are starting to say, we think those votes are phony now.
When you look at the chart, when you look at the vote 2016, the Democrat count, and you draw that line across, and you see this crazy spike. I've seen that chart, and you're like, yeah, where are those voters? Who were those voters? Explain where those votes came from. Someone, please. It's like saying, yeah, there's 100 million people in the US, but Biden got 98 million votes and Trump got 60 million votes. You're like, but there's not that many people in the country. It's like, doesn't make sense.
Yes. And that's the humor in that. And the truth is that it's funny that Democrats are now, they want the investigation now. Which I'm like, yeah, please do it. Please get in on it. Then we can find out.
Why do you think that
because they didn't, because they can't understand how they lost, and they're starting to say, oh, maybe there was voter fraud in 2020 when they start looking at it. Because nobody wants it. I'd say this, in the United States, nobody likes the idea of your vote not being considered sacred.
Right.
And that is important to us.
I think also it's shifted I think for some Democrats, at least, there's been a moral awakening. There's been that they've started to return to objectivity to a degree. There's two comments I'd just like to raise. Villainous says that he agrees the break, this 4-year, the steal, it showed how hideous the left have become, especially with child mutilation, which they were practicing, and Trump had time to look at the issues. He had time to prepare. He had time to prepare cabinet and prepare policies. And then Nicodemus says below, StreamYard just changed their policies yesterday, requiring content creators to waive their rights to legal protection. They made it mandatory to sign in order to continue using the platform, and they quadrupled their prices. I mean, I can't afford that, so that's why I switched to this one.
And I'm not aware of the price change. I'll have to spend more time looking at that myself.
No, StreamYard went from their basic level, went from $25, I think, to double to $45, $50 a month. And their $50 plan, which was insane to get full HD, is now like, don't know, 100 or more. It's whatever. Their prices went way up, and there's no way that I can pay that.
Yeah, we're on the max plan, so yeah, we'll see how that
Okay.
goes.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know what I mean, but yeah, I don't have the kind of, I can't justify that kind of expense. And besides, this is way cheaper, has the same features, and it's all fine.
Well, we have a team working together, so it's kind of a split fee in some directions. So
Right.
that works for us. I think that Mike Rogers, I know that someone said he's a rhino. I've met with him personally, talked with him in person briefly. I just don't see it. Having met with him, talked with him, listened to his speeches in person, you can tell me, he might be from your hometown, but I don't think you've probably had that personal connection or been there physically meeting him. I find it fascinating. But again, Mike Rogers got thrown out of the game before he got to get in and to do the damage that he wanted to do. Now, I say do the damage. Well, he would have removed the Muslim Brotherhood from several areas. And if he had been in, the plan was there was an original plan to go in and toss out all the Muslim Brotherhood members from organizations such as the CIA, FBI, State Department. I can go on and on and on. He was talking about the original plan was to remove them from the executive wing as a whole. All right. And then move from there and go. And this Mike Rogers was to be part of that. So I think that will happen now. I think that plan will come to fruit. I don't think they're going to use the original person they had planned because I think he's enjoying his retirement. That's the only thing I'll say. I don't think he will come back to do that. But there are a lot of people that would have a lot of enjoyment taking fun of that. I work with a good team of people. In fact, Trump is aware of some of those people. So I think there's a good potential for change. If that happens,
I'd be happy to come
exciting.
on board if you guys had meetings in my time zone that didn't require me to be up at 3 a.m.
This is the one thing people did complain about throughout Trump's presidency is he's one of the unusual people. He doesn't require 8 hours sleep. He gets 5 or 6 and he's happy. And he expects everybody to work like he does.
Right.
Yeah. So it's hard for some people to understand when you're doing these, like some days you're doing 24-hour, 48-hour days, and they sound horrible. If there is such a thing, you think about it. But the reality is that kind of pressure, that kind of job gives you those kind of normal hours. I never thought I'd be thankful to see Trump lose that election, but now he knows the game. Now he's going back in. He knows the game. He knows who he can trust and he knows who he can't. So those people are running scared.
I think
there.
I suspect Trump played his cards very close to his chest. Now, he's made some proclamations, and I think that's like beating the grass. That's like trying to flush out the snakes and the tigers. But I think to a large degree, he's got this all planned out, and he's played his cards very close to his chest, and he's surprising everyone because his strategy is hidden. And I think he's going to pounce. So he's beating the grass. That's the noise he's making, but the ace is silent. That's what I think. And
just a phone call to the New York City mayor he just made, and all this. The next day, the New York City mayor said, "Oh, there's no more money for these fake asylum seekers. There's just no more money for you." Like, okay.
Caravan is already broken up, and apparently, the Taliban says they want peace with America. Hamas says they want to end the war, and of course, the Houthis have said that all of their actions in the Red Sea were purely defensive, and they're going to stop now. True story. So, but I think, the Houthis are still illegitimate. They are an occupying force in Yemen opposed to the legitimate government. So how do you think this is going to affect discourse in Europe? You look at the UK. I was watching a video in the UK of a Christian preacher who was, preaching in the UK on the street publicly, which is allowed because Muslims do it, and he was doing so. And he was being slandered and screamed at by a group of leftists. And especially there was one woman who was incredibly loud and obnoxious, and she was close to him and banging a cymbal and screaming and shouting. And a man, she was a foreigner, and a local walked up to her and told her, "Hey, why don't you guys get lost?" And the police actually came over and physically grabbed the guy and told him, "You can't do that. You can't you can't annoy those people." And then he told the women, like, "Can you guys just try to be a little nicer?" And I mean, this was shocking. You've just allowed foreigners to abuse a resident, a citizen, and you've threatened the citizen with arrest if he doesn't leave right now because he was shouting at people that are abusing a fellow citizen who's acting within his rights by people breaking the law. It was shocking to see.
That just happened here in Canada a few weeks ago. I'm across the pond from me in Toronto. So I'm aware of that happening over here as well. It's almost the same exact scenario. It's someone that I consider a friend. All he was doing was sitting on the lawn taking pictures of a Muslim event where they were celebrating things like October 7th. Yes, that stuff is happening. They are harassing citizens for the hope of non-citizens. How will Trump affect that? I think he'll effect positive change in government where the government will realize, that money that we're giving to the UN, Trump's going to make us pay more for that. He's not going to give us this. He's not going to give us. Oh, he's not sending us. He's not helping us with troops. He's not helping us with this. He's not. Oh, okay. So this is where it becomes incredibly important to have someone who understands deals, who understands negotiations, who's a problem solver. And this is the stuff that's got many of them scared. He knows how to play the game now. He doesn't necessarily need a Secretary of State who knows how to play the game. He can actually pick up the phone and play the game himself. And that's what it comes down to. And they're scared because they know he will have no problem exposing them for the walking around in the underwear that they're walking in.
Something interesting. Take Hunter Biden. First of all, you had 51 fake intelligence agents claim that the Hunter Biden laptop story was not real. You had the FBI deliberately suppress that story and then openly lie about it, claiming that it's not real. They sat in it for what, 2 years, year and a half? Then you had... So we don't want to see a government that is out doing retribution and lawfare like you saw the Democrats have done against so many Trump supporters, against the January 6 events, even in UK, just for freedom of speech, for posting on Twitter. But people want justice. There needs to be justice. There needs to be accountability. Where the law was broken, it needs to be dealt with. Now, President Trump apparently, at least some Democrats have said, and I know they've made false reports here and there as well, but for instance, Hunter Biden, they're claiming now that Trump may pardon Hunter Biden, but the man has committed crimes. They've gone after his children. There needs to be retribution. There needs to be consequences. We can't simply allow them because they will see it as weakness. They will see it as, well, we can break the law and we'll just get let off scot-free. We don't want to see this anymore. We want them to know there will be punishment. So what do you think of that particular issue?
I think Hunter Biden has already been charged and I believe found guilty. He pled guilty to some of the things. He lost a deal that he had originally made, so now the punishment's going to be more severe. And the cool thing is that now after this election, so nobody's going to feel any fear in putting Hunter Biden in a locked up facility for maybe a decade or two. I think that kind of term wouldn't surprise me. Will anyone turn around and go after Biden? Probably not. What they're going to look for is who's been telling him what to do, who might be living just down the street with a last name starting with O. That's a possibility. There's a lot of questions as to who was pulling the strings, as we can tell right now from all the wonderful unwritten speeches done by Harris, that she is not the one behind him telling him what to do. And if she is, that's a little scary. But I think, again, you're going to see, and I like what Crane is saying, defund UNRWA. I think that's going to be one of the first things you're going to see. I think the UN is going to... Yes. So in the United States, there is a movement to not just defund the UN, to kick them out.
I would support that. However, you know, sometimes rather the devil you know. I mean, you could take them and put them somewhere else, and maybe you won't have that level of control. Maybe keep them in New York, but put your thumb on them and squeeze so hard so that you tell them, guys, here's how this game is played. And if you don't comply, there's going to be consequences. I mean, Trump wrote The Art of the Deal. The man is a consummate deal maker. What do you think of that option?
I think that's highly possible. I think that's a highly possible situation. I can't see Trump totally throwing them out, but I can see him diminishing almost down to 10%
Right.
of what we've given.
You know, from a Christian perspective, and this is something that's come up a few times, the left has tried to define what Christianity is. The communists have tried to define what Christianity is, eventually claiming that they are the true Christians, that they are in the embodiment of Christian character and Christian nature and Christian doctrine and so on and behavior. And they are saying, well, for instance, you need to support the trans agenda, which is the biological medical mutilation of boys and girls for sexual fetish reasons or whatever, or for reasons of mental illness, which has been a scourge for the last several years. But they claim it's for compassionate reasons, and you need to find your Christian compassion, and you're not being a compassionate Christian. But you do read from St. Paul, especially in Romans, he says justice carries a sword. Christians also have to institute courts of justice to punish the wicked. That God is a God of justice. He's not only a God of love, he also wants to see justice prevail. So, what about that? I mean, we need to see this. And I think this is something that's been forgotten. And everyone's been going, yeah, we need to forgive. We need to put the past behind us. All these atrocities the bad guys did, we just need to forget about that now. But the moment you give them an inch, they will take a mile and they will make those same mistakes deliberately again. Those same atrocities will happen in an instant if they are given. There needs to be some level of accountability.
Well, the first thing you're probably going to see with Trump is he is going to make the law be the law. All right. We have something called, we have a law that protects women's sports. Well, Trump is going to force anybody who does not obey that law to lose any kind of state or federal funding. Now, I'm saying state or federal because when the state decides they want to finance that, they're going to lose the federal financing they're getting.
Right.
So that's going to be a force change. I believe that will be one of the first things you'll see. Now, you're going to see these forced, I'm saying this, forced sex changes of children, because I don't think a child can make a decision like that. Just like I don't believe a child can make a decision to be married. So when you talk about child marriage, I'm calling it forced marriage. I'm sorry. It is a forced marriage. Child doesn't really get a choice because they can't intelligently enough understand what's going to happen in a marriage.
Child
I think
abuse
many
for
young
the
adults can't.
pleasure of the man. I mean,
Yes.
are we supposed to be compassionate to that? As Tony Lynch says very well here, compassion without justice is not compassion. It is just permissiveness to human desire. And
So this becomes very important here in my location. We have a hospital that is world famous, University of Rochester, and the Golisano Children's Center performs sex changes for children. And it's just want to make sure everybody heard that first name there, Golisano, because he's a multimillionaire with his name attached to that, and they are doing this. Now, Trump will have no problem with, you got to look at the stuff he had under his presidency. A lot of child sex rings were getting cleaned up. Oh, when you start looking at this, you're going to see some amazing things.
I found it amazing. There was an interview on TV, and this gets too little coverage, but someone challenged the news media and said, hold on, you're saying the Biden administration is compassionate, looking after all these illegal immigrants. Where are the 300,000 children, prepubescent children that have disappeared? Where are the children, the 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds that have disappeared? The Biden regime has no idea where over 300,000 young children are. Where are they? Well, I think we all know they've been funneled into the child sex slave trade. Where's the accountability for this? I mean, we want accountability at some point, and I think there needs to be investigations, and people need to go to jail.
Well, this gets now the details in this. We have I've just recently seen where they were looking at statistics of where people were sent and how these addresses actually showed up on connections to child sex rings, where they were sending. They were the DHS people were sorry. I don't know what DHS would probably be the right way to start, is to say that they were sending people to these addresses, and there's no way they couldn't know this because they're part of the federal database. All right. There's just no way they couldn't know these things. So there will be prosecutions, and they have, they know who sent them there. They know who did the connections because it's all part of the public record. So there's no way they can't find the connections. So watch for prosecutions of all of those connected to this. That will follow. I firmly believe that. And just as you said, it's justice. I think when Trump comes in, they're going to be people crying and raiding. You're going to rain on my parade. Absolutely, they're going to rain on your parade. Why? Because you are committing acts of such horror that the United States can't be like England. England stood back. Oh, you're abusing my child. Oh, just do it quietly. Well, we won't say anything. Oh, wait, excuse me. The Englishmen that I remember used to stand up with a sword and fight for what was right. What? Are you too childish now? Are you too female-ish to stand up for your own children? Something's wrong. You men who call yourself Brits, I'm sorry. I'm tired of that. My family's British.
No, I'm very concerned for England. And even I was watching the Joe Rogan podcast with JD Vance, and he was saying that he's concerned, and I'm sure this would be something that is discussed, and he said this out loud finally. His concern is that the UK will become the first Islamic state with a nuclear weapon.
I think that's highly possible unless something changes like immediately. And the truth is, I think the population of Brits, not those who are trying to take over the country. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about people who were born Brits have to rise up and toss out those. I'm not for war. I'm not for civil war, especially. But when you have a people who are not standing behind their own citizenry, you have to do something. And that's what happened here. This is, I look at the kids I work with, and the things I do is really important to making sure people understand how the elections work here. And when we vote in the United States, we vote for members who actually elect the president. Now, you might think it's the popular vote. It's not the popular vote. It's the vote for each state, because we all have different desires, and our states are all different. We all go different directions for different things. You want to see what's going to happen. This is the problem with the UK. They don't really have a democracy. They don't really have a monarchy. They don't really have a constitutional or a parliamentary republic. What they really have is insanity socialism.
They do.
They don't have a popular vote that stands for anything, because they just override it, and that is difficult.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Matthew Velasquez. He says President Donald Trump, yes. Islamo-communism, no. And thank you very much for the donation. Very, very much appreciated. So thank you very, very much. And also, I'd like you to use the correct designation. It is Emperor Donald Trump, please. Let's get that right. Let's get that right. What is crazy though? The first past the post system is so, I believe it's antiquated, and it is heavily prejudicial in the sense that, for instance, Starmer got 20% of 20%. Well, there was a very small voter turnout for the most recent elections in the UK. He only got something like 20% of those who voted, which is a minority of the country. And then, for instance, they got 146 seats based on their 9 million votes. Then you look at the Reform Party, which got 4 seats or 5, and they got 5 million votes. So the current communist party sorry, the Labour Party, my bad, the Labour Communist Party got just slightly more than double the votes of Reform, but they got what, 40 times more seats or 20 times more seats, 146 seats or something like that for 9 million votes. But 5 million votes only gets you 5 seats. This is insanity. And then another party that had less votes than Reform got several times more seats in them because they've got this crazy representational system. And this is unfair because that violates the will of the people. And it's insane. And then, of course, everyone is now saying the UK has become a two-tier country in just about every category you can think of.
And you Brits, I'm gonna you're my family history. My family came here to the United States in 1622, and I'm sorry, we learned from the stupidity of the Brits, and we fought against them to the point where I'm very proud that we did. And now I look at the stupidity of the Brits allowing the sexual escapades against their children by saying nothing.
But the thing is, you find the judiciary, the law enforcement,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing
government.
at a statement by.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. Yeah, sorry. But people do complain. And you get the law enforcement saying, look, you're being racist. You're complaining about Asian men, and we find this very racist. Please go away. Or your daughter was complicit because she, her skirt was really short, or she was hanging out with them and decided to get drunk. Your 12-year-old daughter decided to get drunk with these 35-year-old men, with this group of 35-year-olds, and it's therefore her fault. And so there's clear that the law enforcement are complicit. There's this unwillingness to enforce the law, and of course they're afraid. It's easier for them to shut up one 12-year-old girl than to go and deal with the potential horde of rioting Muslims. And this is obvious. There's fear there. Do you think that the Trump victory will change this? Because I think when I speak to people that I know in the UK, there is a simmering discontent that is likely to explode if it's not openly discussed and allowed to be brought into the open. I think this could explode and this could go bad.
I think J.D. Vance set a match, and he is doing the job that a vice president should do. He's going to say the stuff that President Trump might feel a little kept from saying. Well, J.D. Vance has just started that. He set that match saying, look, you guys, he called out the Brits for not standing up for children. And I think that you're going to see more of that every day until the Brits start. Oh, you know what? We have borders. Those guys aren't part of our country. Oh, let us give you a free ride home on a plane with a parachute.
Helicopters. Oil tankers in the oil. Good grief. That was a joke, YouTube. So, I think we both, Paul and I both made an error. We should have called him future President J.D. Vance. Apologies, yes. I get these titles correct. Future President J.D. Vance. JD in 28. Yes, for sure. So talk to us a little bit about the irreconcilable differences between Islamic culture and Western culture. And then what are the differences and what are the risks that ignoring these differences poses to Western culture?
The biggest thing I see going through Sharia right now is there is such a hidden love of slavery. And this is the point I want everybody to think about. Who can become a slave to Muslims? Well, those they conquer. Did we not just see that with Israel on October 7th, where they took hundreds of people? No, they killed over 1,000 people. They took close to 300, I think, captive. And where did they go? They haven't been found. You want to know why? They sold them. And we just found a young lady who had been sold to Hamas people, and she'd been a slave for 11 years. Okay, who was involved in stopping that? The United States and Israel. So we knew about that. That should be horrific to think about.
Why doesn't the leftist media report this?
Oh, I saw it in the Daily Mail, so that's about as leftist as you get.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done, but the issue to me is that no one's talking about the love that Islam has of slavery. No one's putting that out. Yeah, the leftist media will not dare to talk about it because they're too scared to look at the problems. This is where Christian apologists need to get into politics. I mean, the military people who are in there, they're supposed to be looking and studying at something called threat doctrine. It's extremely important you do that, but you can't win a war unless you study threat doctrine. You just can't. You might
Right.
win a battle, you cannot win the war. Well, you need to hire those Christian apologists who can get in there and tell you, well, this is the threat doctrine. I mean, there are some incredible people out there who can tell you the threat doctrine of the Muslim Brotherhood. Oh, if you know
You've got
that,
the
if
Team
they're
B
basing their
report.
hind,
You've got Sharia the Threat, the Team B report, which anyone can buy
yes,
on Amazon, and I highly recommend you do. Please look up the Team B report. It's called Sharia the Threat. Get a copy, read it. You will not regret
and
it.
what's the other guy's name?
And thank you to Mary Alex and Harold Johnson once again. Thank you very much. These donations are very, very much appreciated.
There are a few people out there. I just can't, understanding the threat is an old organization. It's being revised. It's John Guandolo's organization. They have old organization. There's a new one out there. There's several good organizations that exist out there that are willing to carry on the fight. United West here in the United States is a great organization. Usama's the Straight Way of Grace Ministry, willing to do this. I mean, a lot of them are willing would do some of this work for free for the government to look, let us explain to you what's happening, why this is happening, so you don't have to ask the questions. And this is the stuff that needs to be seen, needs to be looked at. The fact that they're not, you know what I foresee, one of the things I foresee happening with when Trump comes in, there are certain organizations I
Emperor
predict will
Trump.
no longer. I can't say that one as an American. I just can't. The two organizations I tell you will immediately lose funding when Trump comes in. One is the Brookings Institute, a Muslim Brotherhood paid organization. The other one is George Washington University. If anything, a large part of that may be shut down financially. So, they're getting a huge amount of money to do anti-American things and to violate the U.S. tax code. So those two places, if Trump is or has ever been listening to anything I've done or said or been involved with, those two organizations will lose money. That's my belief at this point. I went and it's one of the things I did in prep for the show is to go and look at those two organizations. Who do I think would be the first ones to lose money? Those are the two.
Okay, just name them again so I can put them in the chat for the audience.
Brookings Institute, the Brookings Institute. They are a paid organization by Muslim Brotherhood countries.
But they sound
Brookings
so
Institute
British. The
functions out of
Brookings Institute. We wear plaid.
Brookings functions out of Qatar as well.
Highly reliable country.
Yeah. George Washington University has one of the largest Muslim Brotherhood influences in the entire country. Oh, and look where that is. Washington, D.C.
Crazy stuff. The amount of money that these countries, these Islamic countries, these 51 Islamic countries or 54 are pumping into Western elite universities. In fact, do you know that I saw a stat a couple of days ago. If you look at the states that have the highest, the most elite universities, the top 5 states, they all voted blue. That have the most, no, if you look at the states that have the most educated people with the most elite universities, they all voted blue. When you look at the states that have supposedly the least educated people, they all voted red, because American universities are churning out socialist, jihad-friendly university students who have been brainwashed and indoctrinated.
I want to address Phil's question here. He says, is it romantic to believe that as Trump takes office, some type of justice will be served with funding? Well, let me tell you about my when Trump was in office. Shortly after he took office, there was a huge amount of flooding in Lake Ontario onto American soil, and that was because the former president, who I do not consider very good man, which was I call him Obama, and
Hussein, you talking about
this
Hussein?
yeah, Barack
Hussein,
Barack
that's a
like,
Hussein. Hang on.
the
The
flying ass.
Burak,
I'll say
Hussein Burak.
it.
That sounds. Hang on, that's Buddhist. Hold on, no. Hang on. It's Baha'i. I'm trying to get the tone of that name. Hussein and oh, Baraka. That's blessings from Allah.
That's
Hang on, Hussein and Hussein. That's a French name, right? Italian? Just help me out here, man.
I say stick with the first name. There was a flying ass named Barack, and it became president. And Muhammad rode that ass, that flying ass, according to Muhammad was ridden by
Right.
things. But you think about this: that guy became president. He signed a treaty with Canada, and this treaty
Mm-hmm.
with Canada raised the lake levels. Now, locally here in Rochester, New York, we had somebody going to those lake level treaty meetings, and he kept coming home. This is for a few years, telling us each time he went, they were using bad statistics and how they were using bad statistics. And I am not a numbers guy. I just, when I get to numbers, I can listen just so much. And he explained to us every time there's going to be massive flooding when they signed the treaty. They signed the treaty. We had 2 massive floods for 2 years.
Wow.
I talking to somebody I was working with at that moment, and her house was going underwater. I says, I'm not leaving until I pull out all my sources. So I contacted somebody I know who worked in the executive wing while Trump was there. And that was Friday. She was in tears. She was crying. She had to go home. And what happened is that Saturday, I asked Trump to do that in this one thing. I says, have Trump, number one, open the St. Lawrence Seaway to lower the lake levels. Number 2, I asked, cancel the lake level treaty. Well, that Saturday, the St. Lawrence River opened up. The following Saturday, the lake level treaty was canceled. Oh, so to say why do I believe there's justice? Well, I look at how quickly this man acts when he believes something's right.
Right. Do you know
And
there were these
that's the
floods?
thing.
There were these floods in Spain recently, and everyone's blaming that on global warming. And as you know, border crossings are caused by global warming. Inflation is caused by global warming. High milk prices are caused by global warming. Toothache is caused by global warming. You were stabbed because of global warming, and so on. But the whole issue with just like the forest fires in the forest fires in California are caused because of mismanagement by the Greens and the Socialists because they want to keep everything natural. Look, it's also natural not to brush your teeth, but I think I'd rather have a little bit of it's very important to brush your teeth and floss, as I've said many times on this channel. It's not natural, but I think it's a great idea. It's also not natural to, I don't know, shave under your armpits, but it's a, and then use, underarm deodorant. But I think it's a fantastic, if you've lived in Africa and you've been to Asia, trust me, you're going to think that underarm deodorant is one of the most amazing, effective, critically important inventions in the history of mankind. Because trust me, you haven't spent enough time in the third world if you don't think underarm antiperspirant is an incredibly important thing, even more so than sliced bread. Trust me. But on that point, the floods in Spain were caused because they wanted to have the rivers be natural, and they took down dams. They actually closed dams. So because of that, you had floods, and the dams were regulating the floods. And now because, well, nature needs to allow to run its own course, and now 300 plus deaths. And of course, what's going to happen is, I guess, that certain investors are just out of sheer accident going to buy up the land real cheap. Who knows? It's a real possibility. So yeah, I mean, these things. This is mismanagement. This is also because in California they don't clear the brushwood. They don't clear
That's
the dry wood,
well,
and therefore,
it's the same story though. In California, they closed certain lakes. They they had some man-made lakes and things. They stopped them, and dams as well. They destroyed their, and this is one of the reasons why you had massive forest fires and dryness and stuff. A lot of this stuff could have been solved. The mass, it just huge. If you just left things
yeah,
alone and allowed things to continue as they were, but because the environmentalists decided
yeah,
they were the kings, and you know, you start listening
operative
to
word
people whose
being they
brains
put
aren't
the
there.
mental into environment. There's a question from Philip. It says it's romantic of Paul to believe that as Trump takes office, some type of justice will be served with funding. What evidence supports this view? Yeah, I'll take a quick stab at
That's
this. He's made some very strong statements. He's made some very blunt and bold statements, and I think he would undermine his image, his legacy, and his entire campaign would be disillusioned if he failed to carry through, or if he didn't fight tooth and nail to do so. And I think also this election was for his survival, his political and personal. They would have left him to rot in jail. They would have destroyed the country that he loves if he didn't win this election. He would be sitting in court, and he would be thrown in jail, and he would be murdered in jail or on the street. This was a real concern. The same for Elon Musk. It was do or die. And I think they have nothing. They had nothing left to lose. They became dangerous because they had nothing left to lose. And I think, yeah, they realize it's a war. I suspect, but yeah, I mean, we will have to see. But I think you realize people want a reckoning, and he wants to avoid violence. So therefore, public violence. So yeah, what are your thoughts though on that? I mean, how would you interpret
well,
that? Response to that?
I think that you'll see the team come in. You're going to see Elon Musk become part of that team, and they're going to tackle the number one thing I think they're going to tackle is the censorship. That'll be the first whack-a-mole.
And Doge, he's going to kick them out.
Oh yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Is anybody who's been censored, myself and Lloyd included, will see some victory here. Now he needs Elon Musk to understand some of this stuff, because he's not a computer guy, but he has. When you're a bigwig, you hire and you want to be successful in any field. You really want to be successful. You got to find the people who are the experts in the fields that you are not an expert in, and you got to hang out with them, and you got to spend time with them and learn what they think works, and then if you can, give them the power to do what they think is right. So you're gonna see this game played out. You're also going to see, I think the next big thing you'll see happen. We've got you're gonna see, I will call it whack-a-mole. We talk about whack-a-mole when you're taking out jihadis or you're taking out certain things. I think that the Muslim Brotherhood will begin to be cleared out silently. You're going to hear maybe about certain people being removed from office, but no, you won't hear about it very well. The reason why you won't hear about it is because they don't want anybody to know why they're leaving.
Well,
Because
Christopher
they've
Wray
been
apparently
working.
has said that he will be stepping down before Trump takes office, and that's great news. But
Oh,
he needs to go. He needs to go straight to jail. Do not pass begin.
he might be planning on leaving the country, going to a place where you can't extradite. Yeah, I would not want to be him.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I mean, there are irreconcilable differences between Islamic culture and Western societies. One of the major ones you mentioned was slavery, and clearly there's this subversive element. There is this element of deceit. So these are things we have to deal with. What do you think is the most urgent of these issues right now? If we have to pick one issue where Islam's, what is in America, what are people thinking is the problem? and maybe the UK.
So you will see the one thing, part of the Muslim Brotherhood plan to take over the United States and to take over the world has been they have in their plan book the destruction of morality, so they can come in and take over. That's one of the things that's in their plan book. Well, if you look at how their plan book goes, the humor here is that it has been working against them here in the United States. The Somalis made a claim just before the election that they would all vote for Trump because of the immorality and the push for immorality by Biden and Harris. They want to trans your children. In New York State, it went so far as they rewrote. Let me just put it this way: they put in our voting booths a resolution. Not a resolution, but you had to vote on this thing to decide if you want this to be allowed. Where the state can take your children, and if the kids want to be trans, they can be trans. The government will take your children for that. And people could not understand the writing. I'll be honest, I couldn't understand it. But because I know what it was about, I knew to vote against it. So I think Trump is going to tackle one thing, or one. I think you'll see this. He's starting to tackle pieces, not everything at the same time.
Yeah,
he's going to do it piece by piece, and you might not see it all. Muslim Brotherhood goal to destroy morality, to take over. They
want to destroy
discreetly.
Woke left morality or woke left immorality, and yet they still want to impose Islamic immorality as we would see it.
And this is where it's going to get humorous. I think you'll find there'll be an instruction manual for the homosexual community to look at Sharia and see what happens to. I wouldn't be surprised if that comes out, where the homosexual community all of a sudden notices the homosexual that the Islamic community wants to kill them by throwing them off tall buildings or something. Oh, let's go. We're going to send a cut. They could probably simply do this. The homosexuals that want to stand up for the terrorist movement Hamas get a free trip to Gaza.
One way, because they won't need a return ticket. Villainous makes a very
they
good point.
They won't be able to get there. I mean, they might have the return ticket, but they won't be able to use it because they'll be dead before they come back.
Yeah, no. Villainous makes a good point here, which I've also thought. The trans movement seems to be a sterilization program. It's like eugenics on steroids. It's an insane movement. I mean, it's obviously unhinged, but there does seem to be a sterilization issue. And then they go, well, we're not having kids. I guess we need to import the third world. And it's odd. It's really crazy. It's like, why don't you just have kids instead of aborting everything that you can see? Why not just actually have kids? Because it's crazy. You're pushing abortion, but you're also saying, oh my God, we're not having any child births. And it's utterly incoherent. And I think being incoherent is part of the intent to just drive you insane, to just paralyze your mind, to leave you just floundering. And we need to push back hard against this and go back to rationality.
And another thing that this actually plays on another person that Trump has pulled in, which is RFK. So RFK is talking about the stuff that's in your food. He's talking about the medical communities and how people are playing a role in what you eat that can influence your testosterone levels, the ability to have children. I can keep going on and on. So he's been talking about all this. He's actually testified in Congress about this. So this is, again, this will be done quietly. Certain food places will lose certain rights to produce certain things because they will now be monitored in a high. So you're going to see a lot of this stuff happen. You're going to probably see Pfizer go bankrupt, is my bet. I'm saying that because if you're President Trump, you got out and you find out all this stuff you've been told by Mr. Evil Fauci. I will not call him a medical professional. Yeah, there's another possibility of what could happen. He could be charged with a mass murder. And
we know there was a cover-up with the NHS. We know that. I mean, we've seen the email dumps, even the climate scam.
Yes,
we've seen the email dumps. Nothing gets done. And also, RFK made a very good point. He was talking about a particular product. I'm not sure if it was like Snickers bar or something, or something like it. He was saying in Canada, it has 3 ingredients. In America, the same product has 17 ingredients. He was like, what are these ingredients and why are they in there? I can't pronounce
Exactly.
90% of the names. So he says, what's the point? And what's the link to childhood obesity and childhood illness and childhood heart attacks and all sorts of other issues? And he has a point.
And that's where I think, so you're going to see a lot of, it's who he's bringing in. Trump isn't playing games. He knows the game, and you're going to see a lot of, I think a lot of it's going to be quiet. The big thing for Americans that you're going to see, I think it'll happen extremely quickly. It might even happen just before January 20th when he takes office. You know what's going to happen? Your gas bills are going to go down. Your food prices are going to go down. And they all have a understanding of exactly why. And that is, you'll hear people saying a quote from Clinton's day, "It's the economy, stupid." Well, Trump has been on with this, "Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night." You watch. Trump is making those phone calls. We're hearing about it in the news. We're hearing about it. And the next day, somebody does this or that. That puts them doing the right thing. Well, that's happening now every day. And you're going to be seeing those small little changes. Some of them you won't hear about, but you're going to notice it. I think that's it. Trump is a game player. He's a problem solver. And you have just put him in a seat of joy, which is where he likes to be the guy who solves problems. Wait and see.
Right. Lilo Main says, so true, Lloyd. I realized that when I went to Vegas, the ingredient list is massive. So, Lilo, you should not have told us that because you know the rule. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, I'll let it go this one time because it's health related. But I won't ask what you were doing. No, yeah. No, true. I mean, yeah, I was in Vegas once on a business trip. We had a conference there, and yeah, the food was terrible. So like it was the worst. Um, Slight change of gear, but related to the topic, because so I tackle pretty contentious topics on this channel and things that are not comfortable topics sometimes, and it has made me a list of enemies and a list of people who aren't that keen to engage with me. But I mean, I engage with people I don't agree with, but I think we need to deal with some of these topics. We can't ignore them. At some point, we've got to find a way to find to talk about tough issues, which does affect my channel. Anyway, but one of the topics I'm dealing with right now, I'm doing a talk on, and you're welcome to join me in the future if you want to join me on one of these talks. I'm talking about America, founded as a Christian nation, and I'm going through the founding fathers and the early history of America, and it's very definitive Christian founding, and it's Christian laws, and the way that certain quotes have been twisted by the left to imply that no, they were all Martian atheists. And this was the first slide that I did. This is from the Congress, U.S. House Judiciary Committee, 1854. Had the American people during the Revolution had a suspicion of any attempt to war against Christianity, the American Revolution would have been strangled in its cradle. In this age, there can be no substitute for Christianity. That was the religion of the founders of the Republic, and they expected it to remain the religion of their descendants. And I will be talking about how the laws of the US, the government of the US, endorsed, actively promoted, funded Christianity. And now those laws have been completely inverted. Your thoughts on this, and how it relates to, because there's the freedom of speech in the US. That's your First Amendment. There's the freedom of conscience. Benjamin Franklin and others wrote about that. But they didn't place other religions equal to Christianity. They said, sure, you are free to believe in the flying spaghetti monster if you so choose. But clearly, other statements they make very bluntly imply, and I will be covering that, Christianity is the religion of the Republic. It is the religion of the government. Your thoughts on this, and how, returning to this, and do you see us, I think there's going to be a revival, a Christian revival. I think we're going to see religion in the White House. I think we're going to see Christmas come back. This happy holidays, excuse me for saying this, but that is just such a bullshit statement. I am sick and tired of hearing it. And where did Paul go? Oops. And you've got, I mean, the trans day of, what was it? The trans day of celebration on Easter Sunday that the Biden regime had this year. That was insanity for me. So these are things that I would like to see disappear. I'd like to see an acknowledgement and recognition of Christian holidays, Christian words, Christian terms, Christian culture, Christian rituals, which need to come back, because this is what America was founded upon. Did I chase Paul away? I hope he will come back. Let me send him a message. Yeah. Paul Sutliff has come back.
Did I drop
Welcome
out?
back.
I thought you dropped out. Oh boy.
Yeah, so good point. Sandra says freedom of religion meant freedom to choose any Christian denomination you wanted. That didn't mean all religions. Yes, what he meant was, and I'll talk about this in the future, but I have discussed it on the channel. What they wanted was they didn't want any one Christian denomination to reign supreme over the others. And they were referring to Catholicism here. They didn't want Catholicism to be the the preferred one. They want to look, okay, fine, we've got a plurality here of Catholics and a multiplicity of Protestants, and look, let people do what they like. We don't have to like it. Even Thomas Jefferson went off the reservation. He effectively developed heretical views, but he also stated, and in his actions spoke louder than his words even, his views were private. They were his own, for his own reasons. He didn't force them on anyone. And that was all it meant. And thank you for that, Sandra. Your thoughts, Paul? I mean, America's a Christian nation, and I think we need to, and Europe should be Christian nations as well. And your thoughts on this and how it fits into this mix as Christians? We need to start fighting for our culture against Islam and against these encroachments.
I don't think. Well, there's a belief out there right now that Trump, when he was shot, accepted Christ. I don't have a belief either way on that. I'd like to believe it's true, but I like to wait and see from person's actions. I think if there was a time that people would have believed he was a Christian, it might have been when he was in office, because he invited pastors to come to the office and to influence him in very positive ways. So was he a Christian before? Is he a Christian now? We'll wait and see, as things go on. Will there be a fight for Christianity to stand? Well, I think there's going to be a fight against the particular organization that likes to store their weapons in their mosques. Oh, you can think about where that is. There's going to be a fight against that.
Word?
Oh, it's not Buddhism.
Hold on, Buddhists. Are those guys who wear the yellow robes and the sandals, and then they go around yelling something about religious phrases on bridges? That's how the British describe it.
Well, I think it's these people who like to take over roads, which is for prayers, which is against their Sharia, which is hilarious. Every time I see that, I'm like, okay, somebody should go out there and read to them from Reliance of the Traveler about how they're not supposed to be praying on the road. Yeah, that would be fun.
Right. Yeah. John Adams states the general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. The principles on which the fathers achieved American independence were the principles of Christianity. This was a Christian war for independence. This was for Christian independence. This was for the right to develop a nation based on Christian principles.
The whole revolution was preached from the pulpit. It was right from the pulpit. And I think if there's a change that would promote this, it would be a removal of the restrictions in 501c3 that don't allow you to really talk politics. And if that can be done, it'd be interesting, because I'm now aware of many Christian organizations who are willing to give up their 501c3 status, which is a nonprofit status, in order to preach the Bible and to talk and give talks about truth and respect to politics.
Hmm. Yeah, Mary Alex says Trump said we need to bring back the Bible. I mean, look, he brought Easter back. I'd vote for him just for that. He brought Christmas back. He didn't bring back Happy Holidays or Transgender Awareness Days on Easter Day. You know, that was a slap in the face. I want to show. So, how do you think this will affect others? Because if Trump makes this move, if he starts to show an overt Christian bias in the government and supports Christianity, supports the church, supports reading the Bible and Christian culture, do you think this will then motivate others to do the same? It'll create a wave and ripples throughout the culture, even in Europe, even in Britain. This will embolden others because if he goes first, he will embolden others. Do you think that? Because I personally think that would give others the confidence and the courage because courage can be infectious, is infectious, like in Britain, to push back and assert their culture without fear. And eventually it'll become a tidal wave they can't stop.
Well, the big thing Trump believes in and that he impresses on anyone who meets him is his belief in the word legacy. What are you leaving behind? How are people
Mhm.
going to remember you? Well, if Trump is the guy that people remember as having brought Christianity back or emboldened your nation to stand up for its own people, or if he not only did that for his country, but he emboldened all of Europeans' governments to stand up for their own people, can you imagine the legacy Trump will be able to brag about? And
Right.
that's what he would, you know what? He could brag about, I'm saying brag about it from the grave. That's what you have to get. Trump is all about what people are going to think about him after he's gone. And you have to grasp it. That's the only reason the South Korean guy was paying any attention to Trump. Trump was teaching him about the concept of legacy. And this, if you will see anything, if you see anything in London, Germany, any of the Sweden, oh my gosh, Sweden's almost fallen. Denmark's almost fallen. In fact, Sweden, they're no, Germany, they're now doing persecutions of Germans, of people who have left Iran, become German citizens. They're doing persecutions of people who've left Iran because Iran requested it. You want to
Wow.
see organizations wake up and start standing up for their own people? Watch how Trump leads starting in January when he gets there. And he's already starting this game. He's going to start making those phone calls. He's
Right.
technically in a space of in the middle where he can and can't do that. But you watch. As far as Christianity, he has to be a very careful, quiet game. He'll play that
Yeah.
game behind the scenes, and it will happen. It's going to be that'll be a behind the scene game. You might see pictures of him going to a church. It might be
Right.
every Sunday.
Well, he's got nothing to lose at the end. I don't think it's because he's got the mandate of the people. I want to bring up one small thing, and I will be talking about this in my next talk. This is one of the slides that I've got planned. And would you like to join me for one of these to talk about
Oh,
Christianity
sure.
and the U.S. Constitution? I think you're an American, so I've done a lot of research work on this, and I'm planning 3 or 4 episodes or more to talk about this issue because I think it's very, very important. And in contrast, Villainous, it wasn't banned. It shouldn't be banned. That's because the Supreme Court made an egregious error in 1947. But let's have a look at this. This is the Congressional Prayer Proclamation. I'm not going to go into all of the details, but this is from the 1700s. And this was in Congress. For as much as it is the indispensable duty of all men to adore the superintending providence of Almighty God, to acknowledge with gratitude their obligation to Him for benefits received, it is therefore recommended to the legislative or executive powers of these United States to set apart, and they did this at least 16 times, to set apart Thursday, the 18th day of December, for solemn thanksgiving and praise, where the government would pause to specifically, in the Houses of Parliament all over the country, have a day of prayer, of thanksgiving, of fasting, of Christian worship, that with one heart and one voice the good people may express the grateful feelings of their hearts and consecrate themselves to the service of their divine benefactor. The government explicitly promoted and celebrated Christianity. So
There you
we've been lied
go.
to for decades now by the left. and they've pushed their particular religion, secularism, atheist secularism, into wokeness, into the government.
And this is the stuff that is not taught in the public schools. And again, if you look at the history of how this change comes, they get into your colleges, they get into changing what is taught in the colleges. So those people go back to the public schools and don't teach this stuff. They don't want your children to know. And that's where we have to start playing the game back as Christians. We have to get our people into the colleges. We have to play the same game. We have to get that same game plan up. We have to get there. We have to be teaching the truth to those college kids so they can take this back and teach it in the high school, in the elementary school. We have to let them know the truth. Yes.
Well, I hope to start on this channel at the very least, and I want to do several episodes and talk about it and show the overwhelming information and detail that proves that the American founding fathers, the government, were very much strong Christians. And even when they strayed, even when they were dabbling with Enlightenment philosophies and ideas, they still stuck to very Christian roots.
Definitely. That's going to be a good series.
Yeah, so if you're welcome to join me. We'll plan for in this week, maybe Wednesday evening if you're available. We can look at that, or Monday or Wednesday. I'll sometime next week we'll discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So any final words, any final thoughts? Because I think we can sort of wrap up here. But I mean, this has been fascinating for me, and I think we want to give people hope. We want to give them reason to be positive. We want to try and give them perspective and realize that there are reasons, to be positive. There are reasons to think that we're going to succeed, we're going to win this, and to believe that we should. Your thoughts and final thoughts.
The one thing I heard from leftists the day after Trump was elected is, "Oh my gosh, he's going to start all these wars." And I looked at them and I like, you do remember Trump got us out of Iraq, right? You do remember Trump is the reason why we were leaving Afghanistan, but the idiot who was in charge decided to go with a plan that was rejected by Trump and purposely waited. Purposely waited until Trump's plan to get citizens out was no longer financed.
Hold on, just one second. Pete Ross says the founding fathers was Freemasons. Every single one, because Pete Ross, if you cannot prove your statement with fact to show that every single founding father was a Freemason, then you're either wrong or you are lying. So I'd like to know which of those two.
That is a thought that many Americans believe.
Yes. In fact,
and that is not exactly true. And you'll find that out. And Freemasons at that time period here, you could not be a Freemason and express any form of paganism in the United States because you would have been removed.
And also, I've had others who says the Freemasons, the founding fathers were all Satanists, the founding fathers were all atheists, the founding fathers were all Martians, the founding fathers were all Luciferians and Jupiterians and Neptunarians and Plutonarians. And look, seriously, this is like Jesus was a black man, Jesus was a Muslim, Jesus was Japanese, Jesus never existed, Jesus was Dionysus, Jesus was... Pick the name of the god that you want to. Sol Invictus. You can't all be right. Understand? So this is false. This is not true. You will certainly find some Freemason influence, but that statement, as a blanket statement, Pete, is false. So, yeah. Anyway, back to you, Paul.
Watch and see. I think the humor here is people need to start looking at what's already happening. Will there be a huge change? Yes. Will there be a change that is noticeable? Yes. Will there be a push towards what Trump wants to be his legacy? He wants to be known as the best president ever, or as Lloyd would say, the best emperor ever.
It's going to be tremendous. It's going to be tremendous. Something like that, right?
So it's going to be big. I can't use
it big and beautiful, and everyone's going to love it, and it's going to be fantastic. It'll be tremendous. Yeah. So
what's wrong with thinking like that? You want to be remembered as the guy who created peace. Do you remember the left was just saying? I'm just telling you, the leftists are telling me he's going to create war. Oh, he's in the process of
He started
stopping
no new
3
wars,
wars
and
right now.
he brought peace to the world for 4 years.
Yeah. So watch. I think before he even gets in, those warmongers that are out there are running. You're going to see that. The president of Germany, I think it was, the head of Germany was saying he was afraid, or was it one of the people made the news recently, afraid that Trump was going to stop the war in Ukraine. And I was laughing reading that. Well, watch. You'll see stuff happen. Um, it's going to be funny, I think, because you're going to see all those plans actually for the wars to stop they're already in motion.
Right. Yeah, Pete says that 9 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. That means all of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. So 9. Well, at least we have something specific. He says 9. At least we have something specific that we can deal with in the future. And yeah. So guys, thank you. And Adriana Petrakovic, or Petrakovitz. Yeah, I found you from Paul Stubbs. Thank you for your time. You're most welcome. Thank you. Great to have you here. So yeah, Paul, I think we can call it a night. And yeah, I'd love to have this conversation with you again as time allows. But certainly I want to talk about America being a Christian nation going through its history. And then of course we can always look at the UK and discuss some of the issues there, because I think we have to, from a Christian point of view, try to understand that we have a role to play in politics and culture. And everyone says that that politics flows from culture, right? Politics is downstream from culture, but they fail to say the first part of that quote usually, which is that culture is downstream from religion. So it goes from religion to culture to politics. And if you want to fix this, you got to get religion right.
Yes, that's what they said about the Frenchman said about America. It couldn't survive without Christianity.
Yeah. Pete's like, Pete, I think you've got Freemasonry on the brain. You may want to eat some natural food that's organic and go back to better sources. If you're listening to the guy, who's the guy that did riding on a pale horse, or riding a pale horse? Who was the guy, that well-known conspiracy theory author that I used to listen to? That guy, I loved listening to him. All the conspiracy theories. And then one day I listened to him say something that I actually knew something about, and I was like, this guy, what was his name? Hold on, let's find this. Now I got to find this. Oh, now I got to find this.
Bill Cooper? Is it Bill Cooper?
Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper. I was listening to Bill Cooper. I used to listen to him when I was 19, 20, in my 20s. I used to listen to this guy, and I was like, wow, the whole world is. And then one day, he spoke about a topic that I actually knew about, and I realized this guy's talking the world's biggest bullshit. I realized Bill Cooper is just talking out of his ass, and that made me think about everything else he'd been saying, and then I realized he's still talking out of his ass. So yeah, if you're gonna do these single factor conspiracy theories, and yeah. So, but yeah, sorry. Anyway, too much conspiracy theory stuff will rot your brain. It's Bill Cooper, yes. And honestly, there was some stuff I was listening to, and I realized just what a bunch of trash. So, okay, so guys, let's call it a night. And yeah, look forward to having more of these conversations. So guys, thank you very much. And I will see you guys soon. And I'll be back with Paul, and we'll discuss the founding of America as a Christian nation. And I think that that's something that we need. We need to understand that the greatest country in the world started on the greatest principles, and that would be Christian principles. So hold on.
Yeah, you got to address that one.
I'm going to address that one, but you know what? I grew up in Africa. I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, and it's like, I grew up in the third world and dealing with, yeah. So where'd that go? Bobby Sands. Yeah. So goodbye, Bobby Sands. Say goodbye to the camera. It was nice not knowing you, and guess we won't be seeing you ever again. Yeah. So again, conspiracy theory thinking will rot your brain, has rotted people's brains, and yeah, Islam will kill you. Jews aren't wearing exploding vests. Jews aren't wearing belts with dynamite stuck on it. Jews aren't driving over Christians at Christmas markets. And notice in the UK now, the Manchester police have come up with a beautiful statement. I just put a tweet up on that today that the Manchester police have stated, you can feel safe at the Christmas markets. Why? Because we will have armed police officers at Manchester Christmas markets. And why? Because the Muslims will kill you there. That's why. It's not Jews doing it. These are Muslims. So maybe we need to look at some real problems instead of imaginary ones. Last thought to you, Paul, before I call it a night.
Oh, I'm just excited that they're thinking that way. Maybe they're more emboldened because somebody believes in legacy who just got elected.
Yeah. Pete, seriously, I think that most of what you're saying is probably just trash. I'll have a look into it, but honestly, I'm not buying much of it. Pete, all of Washington, hold on, from all of the founding fathers to 9 of them, now all of Washington is Freemason architecture,
Couldn't have happened
everything.
because who did the plans. It's because of who did the plans. It's actually impossible.
Yeah, so like I said, my views on this, and excuse my French here, but I'm from Africa, and that's bullshit. So seriously, there's just too much broad stroke bullshit. I'm from Africa. I can think critically. You're from the first world. You had privileges growing up that I never had. And if I can think my way through this critically and read, so can you. So anyway, good night, everyone. Take care and good night. God bless.